One. Hello and welcome to 5 Minutes with Phil Beardmore. I always get confused about which side I'm supposed to jiggle at. That way. There you go. So today we're going to be talking about environmental branding. While we wait and see if anyone else is going to come on live, usually I like to just talk about what you've been doing today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing before I properly introduce you?
This morning, first thing, I sent a few emails. Then I actually did 2 hours of yoga.
Oh, great. I didn't know you did yoga.
I decided there are people, because I've got an unlimited monthly pass, then you can go as many times as you like. And there are some people that go to 2 successive classes. So I had 2 1-hour classes with a short break in between. And so I'm feeling good at the moment, although I might be a bit tired later. Yeah. And I had some lunch, and then I've been reading my book and trying to sort of relax in time for this and not get too involved in anything.
Great. That was brilliant. Or people who do yoga always seem so happy. So that's something I'd quite like to do. I've putting it off.
Certainly during and after the class. It is good for you in every way. Yeah. There's no two ways about it.
Fantastic. So I've been to Insta Sisters this morning, which I'm not sure how to describe Insta Sisters, but Anne English from Create Intrigue was talking, and she was fascinating, and we all had lovely lunch and a really nice chat, and it was just great. And then just drove back. I didn't drive back at speed because Louise was driving, but I felt like, got to get back quickly. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about environmental branding. So do you want to tell people, firstly, a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then secondly, what environmental branding is or what you mean by that?
I'm an environmental consultant specialising in energy efficiency, renewable energy and water saving. I've been working in energy for about 20 years now, and running my own business for about 10 years. I work mostly with voluntary organisations, but increasingly with private sector businesses who are finding that their energy and water costs are getting out of hand. I do a lot of research and evaluation, as well as direct advice to businesses and sometimes private householders on how to manage their energy and water costs. And by environmental branding, I mean the sort of messages that we use to encourage people to buy environmental products and services, but also for non-environmental businesses. If you're a normal business that isn't an environmental business, you may still have an environmental message. You might be trying to persuade your customers or staff to be more environmentally friendly, or you might be trying to convince your customers or staff that you are an environmentally friendly business. Waitrose, Marks and Spencer's are very good at this, and there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I think that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Fantastic. And I think that's quite topical as well, isn't it? Because I certainly don't know about you, but I feel like the environment has become more of a thing, or maybe it's just because I'm more aware of it myself. I'm not sure.
Well, I think the latest findings from the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, have got to a much wider audience than ever before. And I think there is a growing awareness of just where we are, and that we are, in the middle of.
Oh, you're frozen. Yeah. Okay.
After a period where I think environmental awareness was falling a little bit because the message wasn't getting across, and in this country where but now it's back on the agenda.
I just wondered if you could lean forward a tiny bit, because otherwise that might help with the sound. It keeps going in and out. Okay, great. Carry on. So do you want...
After a period over failed initiatives, government-led initiatives in this country, I think it slipped down the agenda, but I think it's well and truly back now. And also environmentally, I think the economics of it are making more sense to people as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant. So do you want to share your first tip, and we can talk about it a bit more?
I think the first one is to be positive. There's a lot of negative finger wagging sort of environmental messaging out there, and that doesn't work. and it doesn't work in particular with the people who are the farthest away from taking action.
Yeah.
An example of this is towels in hotels. So, you know, when you stay in a hotel, and it encourages you to reuse the towels or not to
Yeah.
put them in for washing if you haven't used them.
Yeah.
And most hotels will say something like,
Oh, yeah.
please reuse, please reuse the towels, or please don't put them for wash if they haven't been used.
Yeah.
And that works for most people. But for people who are less environmentally aware, that doesn't really work. But I read somewhere a couple of years ago that hotels that say things like 90% of our customers reuse their towels have much higher rates of towel reuse than others, because it's creating a social norm. It's not just exhorting people to do something, it's saying this is the normal thing that everybody does. And people are more likely. So positive messages are far more likely to get people to take action, or buy, or devote time or money to doing something, than just appealing to people's better nature. Because for a minority of people, that's just not enough.
Yeah, and we're quite selfish, aren't we? And sometimes you need like a thing to make you feel like you're more like everybody else, rather than just doing it because it's good for the planet. Which
and
it's good for me, but not for everybody.
Yeah, making people feel good about taking environmental action. And, if you look at the branding of people like Marks and Spencer's and Waitrose and the Co-op, in terms of the way they promote their environmental credentials, it makes people feel good about shopping with those brands, and that they're part of something. And that's the best way, really.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's really important, actually. And I'm thinking one of my clients grew up green sells reusable nappies. And once I started working with her, I started buying reusable nappies for my daughter. But she's got three key messages on her homepage, which are all really positive things about why you should use them. It's not sort of, she doesn't do the full finger wagging thing. I think that is really important, because otherwise people could feel really bad about it. And even if you use one reusable nappy in the lifetime of your child, it's better than not using any at all.
And I've seen that website, and it's a really good example of positive environmental branding.
Yeah, fantastic, wonderful. I think if people watching this, maybe they could come up with things that they might do that are like that, because I know that there will certainly be people who will watch this later who I think this would fit with, like Aggie, who has grown up green. So if there's other people who have other examples of their own, that would be really great for them to share a bit later on. Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's really important. So do you want to tell people a little bit more about how they can work with you before we move on to tip number 2?
How you can work with me is I give advice and consultancy to businesses large and small, and also to householders. And for a small business, it might be half a day. I'm based in Birmingham, but if you're outside of Birmingham, then a site visit isn't always necessary. Sometimes I can help you remotely. And what I'll do is look at the energy and water use in your current business, and work out and give you some tips and detailed advice on what you can do to manage your energy and water costs and reduce your environmental impact. And for a small business, that doesn't take a lot of time. And there's always something that everybody can do. No matter how small you are, there's always something that, and it might be stuff that you've overlooked. People, for example, underestimate the value and the ease which you can save water, and how much money you can save, and also the environmental impact of it. And if you visit my website, www.philbeardmore.co.uk, then you can get in touch with me. I'm also quite easy to find on LinkedIn. And for people watching this, I'm offering an hour's free advice. So the first person that gets in touch with me after this broadcast, I'll give them an hour's free advice, which might be by telephone or written, depending on what they need.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. So there are all things you can go. You just reminded me when I used to be when I used to work for a design agency. Before I started doing this, we had rainwater toilets. Which I thought that was great. But I've seen there's a lot more of them now, obviously, than there was then. But I think that was 10 years ago, and to me that was like quite exciting. I'm like, so every time we go to the toilet, we're sort of saving water and things like that. So I guess that could be one of the things. What could be maybe one very tiny thing that we might be overlooking that we could actually do today?
Almost all my clients are using the heating controls incorrectly. There is almost every business and every household can save energy and money through better use of heating controls. And sometimes I mean, the question I ask people is, when was the last time you touched the heating controls? And if you haven't looked at your heating controls this morning, then you've probably missed an opportunity. Most people just leave them and look at them every now and then. But certainly in a bit, and the point is that now that you can get smart heating controls, which manage your heating use much more efficiently than you can manually, and are, certainly in a business, are a very cost-effective investment, because they do it without you noticing, and that they get used to your patterns of use of heat, and the times that you're open and so on and so forth, and they respond to temperature. But even if you use heating controls, there's always scope to use them better, and that's usually one of the places that I start. And invariably, better use of heating controls is almost inevitably top of the list of advice that I give to any client.
Yeah. Yes, I'm feeling very guilty. I haven't looked at my thermostat this morning at all.
Don't feel guilty. Every action counts. Every action makes a difference.
In fact, as you know, I work in my parents' house and the radiator is over here. And my mum turns the radiator off on the end of the week. So when I come in on a Tuesday, it should be quite cold in here, but it's never cold. It only gets cold at the end of the day, and they're always telling me that I should turn the radiator up in the morning so that it'll be warm by later on. And I get notes left all over the place.
that actually sounds quite good. I don't know the house, and I don't know how well insulated it is, but it sounds as if she's got a strategy for managing energy use.
Oh, I'm very organised, yeah.
Which most people don't have. And certainly most businesses, they don't have any kind of strategy, so businesses will typically have a health and safety policy, they'll have a working from home policy and an IT use policy. But apart from a vague commitment to reducing their environmental impact, they don't have any kind of policy, procedure or strategy for managing energy use in the home, in the business. And that strategy doesn't need to be complicated. It can be as simple as, these are the times at which the heating will come on and off. These are the places where we will put stickers asking people to, turn taps off and to close lights when they've finished. And often it is the most simple, cheapest, and DIY actions, the zero cost and low cost actions that make the most difference, because the most sustainable energy of all is the energy that we don't use. And not using energy and water when we don't need it is the most cost effective way to manage our costs and also our environmental impact.
Yeah, brilliant. So we definitely all have room for improvement, and I think that sounds really sensible, to just sit and think about what you could actually do rather than just making a vague commitment. I bet a lot of people don't do that. Fantastic.
Well, it's for businesses, it's a question of time. Unless they are part of a supply chain where their customer requires them to have, for example, an environmental management system, then there's not really necessarily an incentive on people to do it. But if people do it, then it is a really good investment of time, because you're turning waste into value for your business, and that's increasing your profitability, and also managing things like thermal comfort. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of times that I go into offices and you've got one group of people complaining that it's too hot, and another group of people complaining that it's too cold, and they keep going behind each other's backs and sneakily turning the air conditioning on or the heating on, depending on whether they're hot or cold. And a lot of the time the reason is just because the heating controls aren't set properly. Especially if the heating controls are quite old. But a lot of the time they're just not set properly because people aren't aware of how to set office heating controls properly, and it's nobody's job you know, when the building was built or the system was installed, nobody told them how to use them. It's nobody's responsibility to use them properly. So they're just on the default setting. And that's not only potentially wasteful, very wasteful, but also it, you know, it means the building can be uncomfortable. And you've got hot air and cold air literally fighting with each other for supremacy, and people complaining that it's too hot or too cold.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember those arguments too. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so Leanne said, are people really that lazy that they don't turn off taps or lights? Yes, people really are.
Unfortunately, yes. Lights in particular. I mean, I think people are slightly more aware of taps nowadays, but I still go into a lot of buildings where lights are left on. I mean, if you go to office buildings on evenings, you can stand outside, you can see lights that have been left on, and you know that there's nobody in that office. And toilets in particular, bathrooms, people leave lights on. And, you know, you can get zoned, you can get motion sensitive lighting controls for bathrooms, or rooms that aren't used very often, store cupboards, bathrooms, where somebody could leave a light left on and it's on overnight for hours. But you know, motion sensitive controls of lighting are quite a cost effective measure in those type of situations.
Yeah, and they're great when you go to the bathroom because nobody else has touched them.
Yeah.
With the switches. Yeah, I think people are very lazy. My kids are very lazy, but by the time they're grown up, proper, sensible adults, they'll be good at leaving lights off. So I'm working on that. Right, so shall we move on to your second and your third tip? Although I feel like we kind of got quite a lot out of that middle bit there.
Yeah. The second one really is don't scaremonger. There is a lot of scaremongering around environmental issues and catastrophic predictions, and I think, you know, giving people the impression, I mean, we are in a climate emergency and people need to know, but there is a balance between that and frightening people, because frightened people don't think rationally and don't take action, particularly people that are less confident about what to do. So scaremongering and, you know, also appealing to people's sense of the future isn't that effective. You know, saying that we have to rescue the planet for the sake of our grandchildren doesn't work with everybody. It makes people feel powerless. So when I talked earlier about being positive and telling people that they can make a difference and making people feel good, scaremongering is the very opposite of that and makes people feel bad. We exaggerate the benefits of a particular action, because unfortunately there are, you know, mis-selling of environmental products such as dishwashers, insulations, electricity storage, batteries, and I do come across examples of mis-selling of those products, and where the environmental benefits are exaggerated, and that doesn't do anybody any good either, because I think people know when they're being missold. I think, you know, a lot of people know that, and I think a lot of the reason why the take-up of a lot of environmental measures isn't higher is because of exaggerated claims by some manufacturers and some installers, and people think that can't be right, but they don't know how to prove or disprove it, and people don't have a sort of framework, because people don't understand what a kilowatt hour of electricity is. People don't understand what a ton of carbon dioxide is. So when it says people don't understand the relationship between the way they use an appliance and the electricity or gas bill for their business or home. So they've got no way of verifying whether a particular claim is correct or not. But they just sort of know when they're being either given confusing or misleading information. And so, you know, people should never exaggerate. And so if I'm giving advice to a client, I will say, you know, if I recommend a particular action, such as some heating controls, then I will attempt to, first of all, do a baseline as to what their current situation is, and secondly, to say, this is the likely outcome of you doing this action or installing this measure, and you know, you're currently using X. and as a result of this, then I would expect it to change by this amount, and therefore your environmental impact will be X less, or you will save X amount on your bills, and try and back it up with evidence and show the calculations, so that I haven't just made it up. Because when you hear silly estimates and exaggerations of the miraculous properties of certain environmental products, people just don't quite believe it. And so the final tip really is to obey the rules of marketing. Sometimes when it comes to either promoting an environmental business or promoting the environmental side of a mainstream business, people just forget what they've learnt about marketing. And an example of this is a business that I actually am a customer of that recently won an award for water saving from Carbon Trust. And this business has not mentioned it in any of its marketing. It's not in the newsletter, it's not on the website, it hasn't been on their social media. The only reason I found out about it is because the guy who works for them as their environmental manager told me that they'd won this award, and I was delighted for him because they deserved it, but they haven't told anybody. And I think it's possibly because they don't really know how to. And normally when they'd have a good news story, if they had a good news story, say they'd won an award for customer service, or they'd won an award for being a disabled friendly employer or something, then they'd say, right, this is a good news story. How does this add value to our business? How does this increase our value proposition to our customers? How can we say to our customers, you can feel good about shopping with us because we're good at this, and because you shop with us, then we can afford to do. It means that we're able to invest in facilities for disabled people, or water saving, or better customer service tills, or shopping systems, or whatever. And people sometimes forget about that. And you should treat it like any other good news story. Make people feel good about doing business with you, really. Yeah,
people feel good. Yeah, it's when people can be very modest about what's happening, don't they? Like there's a company that I'm thinking about working with at the minute, and they do amazing things that nobody knows about because they haven't told anybody. And you think, why wouldn't you share this wonderful thing that you're doing? But they don't. Maybe they think it isn't a key focus or something, but it's still really worth knowing about.
And again, I think that people like Marks and Spencer, Waitrose, understand that the action that they take on their environmental values and the successes that they can demonstrate environmentally are something that is of significance to their customers. And they do follow the rules of marketing. They do tell people about it. They make people feel good about it. And it's not moralistic or look how clever we are. There's none of the look, we're greener than you, because if you win an award, an environmental award, it's easy to say, look, I'm greener than you are. You lot, and to make other people feel bad that they're not doing anything. But the right way to do it is to say, look, we've done this, you can do the same, everybody can make a difference.
And then people will be interested, and there'll be conversation. It'll be fantastic, and more people will think to do this stuff. So brilliant. Is there anything else you want to add?
I think the other thing is that most people won't buy what they haven't seen, and seeing is believing. And there is a definite sort of peer-to-peer element. So a lot of, for example, smart meters is a big thing in the news at the moment, and it polarizes opinion. I understand why people have concerns about them. Having seen the benefits of smart meters and used smart meter data to help my customers, I'm in favour of them. It's that people aren't getting the best use out of them because they don't understand how to use the data. But there aren't good news stories about it, and so I've now got good news stories about smart meters, and I could say I've helped this business to save money by using smart meter data. But there isn't really a platform for me to share that with people. And, you know, there has been a big campaign to encourage people to have smart meters. But I think what's missing from that at the moment is case studies of people like me and people like you. And I think, you know, that's what's missing. You know, people that we can identify with coming on the telly and said, well, you know, I was unsure about having a smart meter, but I've had one for 6 months, and as a result, it has enabled me to do this, and you can do the same. And that's what's missing from it at the moment, because, you know, most people have never seen a smart meter. When the engineer comes in your home to install it, you can't really tell that it looks a bit different, but, you know, unless you know what it can do, then you're going to think, well, big deal. So unless you've seen is believing, and unless you've seen something working, most people buy, you know, with any sort of new product, there is an adoption curve, and there are people that are the first to buy it and the first people to have it. That isn't really happening with smart meters at the moment, because it is a government target, and so that's, people feel that they're being imposed on you, whereas they've been, if it had been left to, and maybe the energy companies are the wrong people to do it, you know, that they're the wrong people to sell smart meters because people don't trust them. And so maybe that whole campaign around smart meters should have been thought about differently, and maybe it would have been less stressful, and there would have been less sort of polarization of views around it. And, you know, if they'd been made available to customers, I mean, I haven't got smart meters in my home yet, because I was only offered them a few weeks ago, whereas other people have had them for a couple of years. Now, if I'd been offered them a couple of years ago, I might well have said, yeah, I'll have one. But as it happened, I was only offered one a few weeks ago, and I said yes. Anyway, the guy came around to install them, and he was unable to because of a problem with some fuses, which is now going to be resolved. And that would put a lot of people off. But the point is, you know, what normally happens is that the people that are the keenest have them first and then tell their friends, and that hasn't happened. They just put them in willy-nilly. And so the people like me that should be having them and saying to my friends, I've got one of these, we're not necessarily the first to have them. And so they've sort of interrupted the adoption cycle, and just a really top-down government and energy company-led initiative, which just seems strange to people. And it's not surprising that they've had difficulty with selling the idea, and I think it could have been done a lot better.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who's mentioned to me that they have a smart meter. So I've been off. I haven't done anything about it yet.
Well, chances are a lot of people that you know have got them, but they've got them, and some people might not even know they've got a smart meter, because I've done workshops with the general public, and at the beginning I say, how many people have got a smart meter, and some people put their hands up. How many people haven't? How many people don't know? And there are people that aren't sure whether their meter is smart or not. And there are people that think they've got a smart meter, and it turns out that it isn't. But yeah, you will certainly know people, but they're not bragging about it, because they may not even understand how to use it properly, and they're almost certainly not getting the full benefit of it, because very few people know, because nobody tells them. They get a very they'll get a booklet, and they'll get a very brief demonstration. That's an interesting comment. I don't think I have a smart meter, as we can control the thermostat with that, as it only tells us our energy usage. Yeah, that is typical of a situation. I mean, I'm not sure who said that comment, but that is the way people
control, not can.
may have a meter in their home, but it's essentially just a counting device. The risk with smart meters is that they end up just being the same as the meter that you had before. They literally just measure the amount of kilowatt hours of electricity or cubic meters of gas, and they don't give you any of the potential features and benefits that a smart meter should have. And the same goes for a business as well. And so there's a lot of people that, you know, aren't making use of the features and benefits of them. And certainly businesses, the smart meter rollout is definitely happening in businesses, and, you know, corner shops. I mean, I've been working with a chip shop recently, and, you know, they've got smart meters, but they're not really, they don't really understand how to use it. They're not making use of the data. It's not helping them to, you know, identify when they're wasting energy and so on and so forth. But again, most people won't buy what they haven't seen, and most people have haven't seen one in action. And because energy meters tend to be hidden anyway, you hide them in a cupboard. I mean, if you have a solar panel, you know, it'll be on the roof, and everybody will be able to say, "Oh, look, they've got a solar panel," you know. Or if somebody's got an electric vehicle, I mean, the uptake of electric vehicles, there are advantages and disadvantages to an electric vehicle, but electric vehicles are starting to become mainstream, which environmentally is overwhelmingly a positive thing, and that's because they're very visible. And you know, you can see that your neighbour's got an electric vehicle. People talk about electric vehicles. People love talking about cars. And interestingly, the way they're marketed, if you look at TV advertising for electric vehicles and hybrids, it's very mainstream. They're appealing to the mainstream, and they're appealing to people's sense of lifestyle and you know, luxury. That they're portrayed as luxury things. It's not, and they're careful not to present being environmentally friendly means we have to go back to the Stone Ages. What they're saying is you can be environmentally friendly and still get about, still look smart and flash in your nice car, you know, still look really stylish. Whereas with a meter, a smart meter, you don't talk.
No, it's not quite the same.
Problem with increasing.
Oh, I've lost you.
No,
you're back, I think.
I'm back.
You are. Go on.
Yeah, I'm still connected.
Yeah, it just flows for a moment. Yeah, you don't talk about smart meters so much. It's interesting, isn't it? Yes. So they need to really up that game then, the smart meter people.
Yeah, it needs to be rethought. But I mean, it's probably too late now. And what worries me, I mean, sooner or later, almost everybody will have a smart meter. There will be some people who physically can't for technical reasons, and there will be some people who will just refuse to have one. But most people and households and businesses will end up with a smart meter. What worries me is that they won't understand how to get the best of it. They won't use all of its features and benefits, and they won't be able to use it to manage their energy consumption in the way that they should be, because it's just something that's put in and forgotten about, and people aren't educated about it. And that's a missed opportunity, really. And it's the advertising campaign that I think is the missed opportunity. Fun and there's been characters, but it's not enough to persuade people the way they view an electricity or gas meter, or to change the way that they view their energy consumption, which is just to switch it on, forget about it, and pay the bill when it arrives. And smart meters should have been an opportunity to do that, but the evidence is that that's not what is happening, because people aren't getting the correct advice. And I mean, for businesses, now, most businesses that I work with will have a smart meter, at least for electricity and possibly for gas. And so one of the first things I'll be looking at with any business is to get hold of their smart meter data, and to help me to understand their baseline of energy consumption, and to help inform a strategy for them. And it's also critical to the monitoring of it as well, because one of the things that I enjoy doing particularly is to monitor how the effectiveness of the actions that people take. So if I advise people to do something, what I'm interested in is monitoring whether it's worked or not. I don't want them to just do it and then forget about it. I want to know if it's worked, and I want to know how many kilowatt hours of energy it saved them and how many pounds it saved them. And smart meter data is absolutely fantastic for that, because it can show you, these meters, they take readings every half an hour.
Yeah.
And so I can tell, to within half an hour, whether they're wasting or whatever, and that's really useful. Somebody made a comment about video tutorials about smart meters. I wish I had the time. I mean, I'm doing. I've done there's a workshop that I do, but yeah, I mean, I would love to develop some online learning materials. There's a charity that I'm working with called the Disability Resource Centre, who work with disabled people and their carers, and they are doing some online education for their users who do use the internet. It's they're doing some online training in being a good energy consumer, understanding your rights as an energy consumer, understanding your energy bills, understanding how to complain to your energy company, understanding heating controls and that kind of thing. And I'm really excited about that, because it's it will reach a much wider audience. It's the kind of stuff that I've been doing for years, but with half a dozen people in a room in a community centre, which is great. But this has a much wider potential audience. So that, but yeah, we definitely need more of that. And there are some really good ones. I mean, the Centre for Sustainable Energy, CSE.org.uk, they have some really good videos. There's one about using storage heater controls. Again, that's something, the amount of times that you go into all electric homes with storage heaters and people don't know to use the controls. So CSE.org.uk and their YouTube channel, they've got a number of videos about energy saving in the home, which are really good. But for businesses, there isn't the kind of free stuff available that there used to be. The Carbon Trust used to do a lot of free stuff, but it's not there anymore. But investment in energy saving advice for a business is a very cost effective thing. I mean, normally, people will pay me for a couple of days to come in initially, and then a bit more to follow up. But I mean, I remember I did a piece of work for a client an office building with about 50 people working in it. And the top recommendation was to reposition a thermostat, which cost them, and because it was a portable one, it cost nothing. It took one person 5 minutes to reposition this room thermostat into another part of the building, and this is something that should have been done 20 years ago. And I recommended them to do this. Anyway, the next time I went in, the client said to me, I followed what you said. I've repositioned the room thermostat. And I said, how long did it take? She said 5 minutes. I said, you've probably just repaid the money that you paid me. You've recouped the fees that you paid me in a matter of minutes, just by that one action. And the point is that for every year in future that the room thermostat is in the right location, they will continue to save year on year. And that was one of a number of things that I asked them to do. And again, it's an example of the simplest, low cost, zero cost DIY measures to do with the way we manage appliances are often the most cost effective, because the most sustainable energy is the energy that we don't use. And that was a really good example of it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like that. That simple DIY, easy things that we just don't think about. So we need to go and get you to help us all out with our businesses and to get that 1 hour free. Someone will have that 1 hour free. And that would make a huge difference. That was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to end the broadcast.
Okay.